Loud, mocking laughter echoes through the park as a group of teenage boys crowd around a young girl's wheelchair. One of them shoves the side of the chair hard, nearly tipping it over. The girl clutches the handles tightly, her wide, terrified eyes darting between the towering bullies. They sneer down at her, cruel smirks plastered across their faces. "What's wrong? Can't you stand up like a normal person?" one jeers, while another mocks her limp legs, mimicking her attempts to move. Their voices drip with arrogance, taunting her with every word. All around, people glance uneasily but quickly look away. Parents tighten their grip on their children, stepping aside, unwilling to confront the scene. A few feet away, just beyond the crowd, a small film crew is gathered, cameras resting, cast and crew on a break. Sitting quietly among them, Jason Statham watches, casually holding a coffee, dressed in character for his upcoming movie, A Working Man. His expression remains unreadable. When one boy roughly yanks at the wheelchair handles, Jason's jaw tightens. Calmly, he stands, removing his jacket and handing it to a crew member. The bullies keep laughing, until they meet Jason's cold, unblinking stare. Everything shifts. Before we proceed, like and subscribe to catch Jason Statham's epic face-off with teen bullies, and comment where you're watching from today. It was a crisp afternoon at Riverview Park, the kind of place where families gathered to enjoy the breeze, children laughed on the swings, and the scent of coffee wafted from a nearby cart. The park buzzed with life, dogs pulling their owners, teenagers lounging by benches, joggers weaving past strollers. But today, it held one unusual addition. Near the center lawn, a small film crew had set up camp, cameras now resting as the crew took a break between takes. Bright orange cones marked off a few areas, drawing curious glances from passers-by. Among the crew, Jason Statham sat quietly on a bench, a coffee cup balanced in his hand. Dressed in a rugged work jacket and jeans, costume for his latest film, A Working Man, he exuded a relaxed yet alert presence. While the crew chatted casually, Jason remained observant, scanning the park almost instinctively. Years of discipline made it impossible for him to switch off completely. Even in downtime, his gaze caught every movement, every sound. No theatrics, no bravado, just a quiet readiness beneath calm eyes. Across the playground, the laughter of 4 teenage boys cut sharply through the chatter. They were loud, entitled, their voices tinged with the arrogance of kids who had never been told no. Dressed in designer hoodies and sneakers, they moved in a pack, swaggering, careless, always scanning for attention. For weeks, locals had quietly complained about their behavior. They pushed boundaries, teased younger kids, occasionally roughhousing without consequence. Today, their eyes had landed on a new target. Near one of the shaded benches sat a 10-year-old girl, small and delicate, her dark hair pulled into neat braids. She maneuvered herself slowly in a wheelchair, her thin arms adjusting the wheels while her caregiver spoke with another parent nearby. There was something bright yet quiet about her. She seemed used to being overlooked, her gaze fixed downward as she patiently waited. Anyone paying attention might have noticed the way she avoided the louder areas of the park, sticking close to familiar corners, her face unreadable but alert. Jason had noticed her earlier, just as he had noticed the boys. He had watched as they laughed loudly, tossing soda cans toward trash bins, shoving one another for fun. And he had seen, with unmistakable clarity, the moment they shifted their attention toward the girl. His jaw had tightened slightly then, though he remained seated, his focus sharp. It was a subtle moment, almost invisible to anyone else, but Jason recognized that shift all too well. Something in the air told him it was only a matter of time before the boys crossed a line. Jason's eyes narrowed slightly as he watched the group of boys drift closer to the girl's bench. At first, their words were just loud enough to catch fragments. Snickering, whispers, a crude joke tossed between them. But soon, the teasing sharpened. One boy, taller than the others, casually blocked the girl's wheelchair path as she tried to adjust her position. "Hey, you need a license for that thing," he sneered, circling around her. Another boy leaned in, grinning. "Bet she runs better than you do." They laughed loudly, deliberately, the noise drawing glances from parents and passers-by. The boys flanked the wheelchair, standing too close, making it impossible for her to move forward without brushing past them. The girl gripped her chair handles tighter, her knuckles pale. Her face stayed neutral at first, trained from years of brushing off pitying stares, but her jaw quivered slightly as the boys' shadows loomed. She glanced around, searching for her caregiver, but the woman stood a few paces away, distracted in conversation. One boy crouched, making a show of inspecting the wheelchair's wheels. "Wonder if this thing's got turbo," he mocked, giving the wheel a flick. The others burst out laughing, each taunt louder than the last. Around them, the park's lively hum seemed to falter. A few adults glanced over, frowning, but quickly looked away. No one stepped forward. Parents murmured to their children to stay close, steering them to another section of the park. Joggers slowed momentarily, eyes flicking toward the scene, then moving on. It was easier to pretend it was harmless. Easier to avoid becoming involved. Jason remained seated, one arm resting casually on the back of the bench, his coffee still untouched. From a distance, he looked relaxed, just another man enjoying his break. But his gaze was locked, steady as a blade. His jaw clenched once, almost imperceptibly. The boys were not finished. The tallest one suddenly reached for the girl's backpack, dangling from the side of her chair. "What's in here?" "Snacks." "Diapers," he taunted, tugging at the strap. She yanked it back with trembling hands, her eyes darting, tears starting to pool at the corners. Another boy leaned on the back of her chair, tilting it slightly off balance. "Careful," he smirked. "Wouldn't want to tip over." The girl froze, unsure whether to cry or call out. She was cornered, wheels pinned, surrounded by jeering faces. Her lips parted but no sound came out. Jason exhaled quietly and stood. Without a word, he slipped off his jacket, folding it once, and handed it to the crew member standing nearby. The crew watched, confused, but said nothing. Jason's focus had shifted entirely. He started walking, steady, unhurried, every step deliberate. The laughter continued until one of the boys finally noticed the shadow approaching. His grin faltered. Jason's cold, unreadable eyes locked onto them. The entire energy shifted in an instant. The tallest boy, still smirking, was the first to spot Jason approaching. He squinted, confused for a moment, then chuckled and elbowed his friend. "Look at this guy. Who brings their dad to the park?" he sneered, loud enough for everyone to hear. The other boys laughed nervously, their earlier swagger faltering just slightly. Jason kept walking, eyes fixed, posture loose but deliberate. No rush. No words. Just that unreadable calm. One boy leaned closer to his friend. Is that guy with the movie crew?" he muttered, uncertain. Around them, the bystanders who had previously looked away now paused. Conversation slowed, eyes shifting toward the scene. A few people edged closer, curiosity pulling them in. Murmurs began to ripple. "That's Jason Statham." "Is it really him?" "I think he's filming nearby." Parents gathered their children closer but stopped walking. Even the film crew glanced over, quietly watching as Jason advanced without breaking stride. The boys tried to recover. "Whatever," the leader scoffed, voice louder than before. "Old man thinks he's tough." Emboldened, one of them stepped forward, deliberately planting himself in Jason's path. He squared his shoulders, face twisted in defiance, and shoved his hand out as if to block the way. "Mind your business," he spat. Jason did not flinch. He stopped just inches away, his gaze sharp, unreadable. No words. No reaction. Only a cold, unwavering stare. For a heartbeat, the park seemed unnervingly quiet. The boy's outstretched hand slowly faltered, fingers twitching. Jason's eyes never left his. Everything about him said one thing: "Do not test me." The boy's hand hung awkwardly in the air, caught between bravado and uncertainty. Before he could pull it back, Jason moved, quick, smooth, deliberate. He gripped the boy's wrist firmly, fingers like iron, not enough to cause pain but enough to stop him cold. The boy's smirk vanished. Jason's voice, low and calm, cut through the air. "Careful." There was no aggression, no need to raise his tone. Just absolute control, and the boy felt it instantly, the unmistakable sense that he was outmatched. Jason released his grip, and the boy stumbled back a step, his confidence unraveling. His friends shifted uneasily behind him, casting glances at one another. The earlier laughter was gone, leaving only silence and a growing discomfort. Jason's gaze swept over the group slowly, his eyes hard as stone. Enough. One of the boys, desperate to regain face, forced a weak grin. Relax, man. We're just messing around. Jason's expression did not change. Does she look like she's laughing? The boy's smile faltered. All of them turned to glance at the girl still frozen in her chair. Her wide eyes were filled with fear and confusion, her hands gripping the wheels tightly. Jason took another step toward them, voice quiet but razor-sharp. "I've seen you before," he said evenly. "Last week. Same park. Same attitude." Recognition flashed across the tallest boy's face. His shoulders tensed, realizing this was no coincidence. Jason's eyes narrowed slightly. "I let it go then. I'm not letting it go now." The park had fallen completely still. Parents, joggers, even the film crew, all eyes locked on the confrontation. The boys stood trapped under the weight of Jason's steady stare and the crowd's silent judgment. Jason nodded toward the girl, voice leaving no room for argument. "Apologize. Properly." The boys hesitated, shuffling awkwardly. One of them opened his mouth, but whatever excuse he intended died on his lips. One by one, they mumbled apologies, quiet, clumsy, but unmistakably genuine. Heads lowered, their confidence stripped away in front of the watching crowd. Jason waited until the last boy spoke, his gaze unwavering. Then, without another word, he stepped aside, clearing the space between the boys and the girl. The power dynamic had shifted entirely. There was nothing left to hide behind now. Jason casually adjusted his jacket, calm as ever, his message delivered without needing to say more. The boys stood awkwardly, shoulders slumped, eyes cast downward. The weight of the crowd's silent stares pressed on them. But Jason was not finished. He pulled his phone from his pocket with the same calm precision, dialing without hesitation. One by one, he asked each boy for a number. There was no room for refusal. They obeyed, voices low, faces burning. Jason stepped a few paces aside, his conversation brief but firm. He explained the incident clearly, without embellishment. Names were shared, details relayed. On the other end of the line, the parents' reactions varied. Shock, embarrassment, hurried promises to deal with their sons immediately. By the time Jason ended the last call, the boys looked even smaller, realizing the consequences had followed them beyond the park. Satisfied, Jason turned back toward the girl. She sat quietly now, her hands finally relaxing from the wheels of her chair. Her breathing had steadied. For the first time since the ordeal began, her lips curled into a small, grateful smile, soft, genuine. Jason met her eyes briefly, offering the slightest nod. He said nothing. There was no need. Without fanfare, he retrieved his jacket from the crew member waiting nearby. The film crew stood frozen, unsure whether to applaud or speak, but Jason brushed past them, slipping the jacket back on. He walked calmly toward the cameras, ready to resume filming, leaving behind only the echo of his actions. No praise. No applause. Just quiet justice, delivered. The crowd slowly dispersed, conversations quieter now, eyes lingering where the confrontation unfolded. Some walked away thoughtful, some embarrassed they had stood by without stepping in. It was a reminder. Silence enables cruelty. The boys had not acted alone. They thrived because no one dared to stop them. But it took one person, calm and firm, to change everything. True strength does not shout, boast, or seek attention. It stands up for those who cannot fight back, without asking for anything in return. Respect is not demanded through fear, it is earned through action. As Jason returned to his film set, the message lingered, unmistakable to everyone who witnessed it. Real strength is not in how loud you are. It is in how you treat those who have no voice.